Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the show. John Henry Soto here with you, as always, bringing you the latest in entertainment and what's happening behind the scenes, and just some views and opinions in a hopefully an entertaining and digestible way. It is 7 a.m. here in Nashville, Tennessee, July 23rd, 2026, and we have a lot to talk about today. Does an opinion ruin an artistic journey? Well, that's the conversation we're going to have this morning, and I'd like to hear your thoughts. If you have any comments on that, please just drop them in the comments below there, and let me know what your thoughts are. Share this and subscribe to my channels, and uh, and then let's get into conversations here about what's happening in the art world and in the behind the scenes in the entertainment industry. There was a time when most entertainers were known primarily for their work. Who remembers that? You just knew the artist for the work that they did. Audiences bought the records, watched the movies, or filled concert halls because they admired the art, not because they knew every opinion the artist had on politics, current events, or social issues. Today, social media has changed that relationship. Many celebrities are expected to comment on everything happening in the world, and in some cases, their political views or personal beliefs become bigger than their public identity, than the music they write, or than the films they create. Whether people agree with them or not, the conversation often shifts away from the art itself. And isn't that tragic? And I've fallen into this, and I'm not a major celebrity. I'm just saying that I've fallen into this as a filmmaker and as a musician, and doing my show here. I've fallen into the trap where I've actually have expressed my views, on certain things, because I'm a human being, and I see things. But then I realized, it does affect you as an artist, because it shifts people's opinion to a point when where they're when you're speaking about something now, um their views are always going to be shifted. Like, if you do a show on one platform, you're this side of the aisle. If you do a show on this platform, you're that side of the aisle. If you do your show all on both platforms, or all the platforms, then you're not taking a side, or you're not taking responsibility for. There's always a problem. So I just figured, you know what? Let me just make jokes about some of the political things. Let me write some posts. Let me write some articles on it that are a little bit more on the humorous side, and let me ask questions to people. Just ask questions and have them engage on in a conversation. And if they want to go at each other, then that's on them. I just like to ask questions to see what the views are that I get back from people, what opinions are out there. The feedback is always interesting. When an artist becomes more famous for their opinion and their craft, something valuable can be lost. Instead of discussing a powerful performance, a great album, a memorable film, the headlines focus on controversy, debates, and social arguments. The work that took years to create can become secondary to a single post or interview. Art has a unique ability to bring people together across different backgrounds and beliefs, but that connection can become more difficult when audiences begin viewing everything through the political or ideologies, and those lenses. So yeah, if you're viewing everything through an ideological lens, or a political lens, you're not necessarily seeing the art for what the true art is, or for what the artist had in mind. And this becomes a little bit difficult for the artist to navigate through, because when they're asked questions, sometimes those questions are asked about their film, and then about the current state of something. And that responsibility is what they think that the audiences want. They want them to have this both sides of the coin. When in actuality, it's not really that valuable to the audience member to know the political views of an artist. It really isn't. It doesn't really enhance their art, right? One example often mentioned is Elvis Presley. When he was asked about the Vietnam War, he reportedly declined to offer a political opinion, saying that he was an entertainer and preferred to leave those discussions to others. He There's a famous video, you can watch it on the, on anywhere. You can watch that video where Elvis is asked a question about it, and he said, he's an entertainer. He goes, I'd just rather keep my opinions to myself. And whether every public figure chooses that path is a personal decision, but there is something to be said for allowing the work to speak for itself. A memorable song, a timeless film, or an unforgettable performance can outlast political debates and continue to connect with audiences decades later. And I think that's always an important thing to remember, that when you're gone, that whatever art you created is going to linger, it's going to stay there. And if it's attached to a ideology of some sort, it's going to make it very difficult for people to have just for not to have a biased view of just watching it. So you're going to be watched by, so I try to be careful. Again, I use humor for most of it. Questions, I like to ask questions to see where people are, where society is. I like to post these questions. Some of them may be a little bit on the political side, but again, there's not giving an opinion. I'm usually just asking a question or stating something like, isn't it interesting that this is happening right now? And sometimes, the my feed, I get a lot of followers, so the feed gets pretty hot and heavy there. People are attacking, and they're going at it back and forth, and I don't get involved in that part of it, because now they've taken the person has taken the side, and haven't really given me enough feed, enough fodder for me to actually look at. It's so it becomes a little bit of a of a show for people, and it's entertaining. Don't get me wrong. Some people they love that. They love to get in there. They love to get messy and talk about what's happening, and uh, for whatever reason, they enjoy that element of it, right? But none of this means artists should abandon their conviction or pretend not to care about the world around them. Every artist has the right to hold personal beliefs and speak when they feel it is important. But there's also value in preserving a sense of mystery, allowing the audience to focus on the work rather than the personality behind it. Sometimes the most enduring legacy isn't built on being the loudest in voice in every debate. It's built on creating art that people from every walk of life can appreciate for generations. So there's a lot of artists right now that are very, very political, that are legendary, artists, filmmakers mostly. And now it becomes a little bit difficult to watch their work sometimes. For me personally, anyway, some people can get around that. Some people don't care. That's fine. That's good for you. But for me, it is something that it's like, wow, I wonder, they're doing this film which has this viewpoint, but yet they have this viewpoint. Very interesting that they can do that. But again, they're actors, and they can shift it, right? That's what they're supposed to do, right? If you're playing a serial killer, you're not a serial killer. You don't have to go out and do that. You just you just you act it out. Find it you find some pain or something to deal with, that creates that character, right? So you don't have to experience everything, but it is interesting to see some of the choices that some of these actors make. So here are 5 ways that you can keep your integrity while keeping your art first. These are things that these are 5. They're not 5 listed anywhere. They're not 5 important ones. They're just my own opinion on these, on how to do that, on how to, keep it. So let your work be the loudest statement. Number 1, focus on creating excellent music, films, or performances that reflect your values through quality rather than constant commentary. So let the thing actually do. Now I'm here doing a this is a statement I'm making right now, right? But it's not really, I don't have a side I'm taking. I'm asking a question. Does does having an opinion ruin your artistic journey, right? And at what age do you like if you're a young person and you start getting into these political worlds and you start really hitting it hard, does that change the trajectory of your journey? You know, does it change how casting people are going to cast you for the future? That's a very interesting thing. So let your work be the loudest statement. Number two, choose your moments carefully. Not every issue requires a public response. Speak when you generally have something meaningful to add, not because social media expects it. So in this era of social media, right, we're led to believe that we have to be out there all the time on social media. And to a certain degree, that is true because that's where people's eyes are and that's where the attention is. And, the attention is the currency of today's civilization, right? So you have to be out there, but you don't necessarily have to participate in every single argument that is a political one or something controversial. You know, you don't have to do that. It doesn't Social media is not where you're supposed to put those things are. It's just where you're sharing your journey. Now if you want to make your journey that and that is part of your journey, by all means, have at it. Number 3, separate your personal life from your public brand. You can have a strong conviction without making every interview, post, or performance about them. It's kind of like where I lean towards a little bit. I do sometimes make a comment here and there about something that I care about or about just something it's a little bit of an outrage on something. So I do sometimes will say something. I don't get into it really heavily, but I try to separate the two. I have my personal opinion, I have my views on certain things, and then I have the work that I put out, which which has nothing to do with it. Number 4, respect that your audience includes people with different viewpoints. Create art that has the ability to unite people who may disagree on many other things. So it's okay to have an opinion, but also understand that your audience is gonna have people with different opinions on all sides. So whenever you're putting something out there, if you have a hundred people that are watching you and that like what you're doing, if you're putting an opinion out there that's 50%, you're losing 50% of your audience, and not necessarily in a good way. You're not losing them because you're losing them because they went there to see your art, and now you put in something that didn't have anything to do with it. It's sort of like when people go to a concert. They pay a lot of money for some of these concerts, and then you have the artists out there preaching. Well, what if you had no interest in that whatsoever? You just wanted to hear you paid a lot of money to hear some good music, and now here you have to be preached to, right? Can be a little bit annoying, right? That was number 4. Number 5, the last one, is protect a sense of mystery. You don't have to share every opinion, every experience, or every detail of your life. Spotlight on the work, Sometimes leaving the spotlight on the work, not the artist, creates a deeper and longer lasting connection with your audience. I think of artists like, and I really don't know if they're political out there. I haven't seen any political stuff, but I think of like Daniel Day Lewis, right? One of our greatest actors ever, right? I don't really know what his views are on anything. Maybe they're out there and they're really strong. It hasn't come across my feed, heavily. Um, Somebody like an Al Pacino. Al Pacino, I'm sure, has an opinion. I don't see it often where he talks about it out there. He's 86 years old now, right? Now, Robert De Niro, on the other hand, I know exactly where he stands because he's done it many, many times. So his current films for me are sort of like, and he's a brilliant, and I loved him in The Irishman. Which I watched. I watched that film all the time because I love that film. But I've seen him in that. Meet the Parents, of course. The Second Godfather, and he's Goodfellas, one of my favorite films. Brilliant actor, but in his later years, he's definitely taken on another color, and so his work has become kind of infused with that whole other political side that he's chosen to be very, very vocal and in some cases vulgar about his views, and that's his choice, right? He is a free thinking man. He can do whatever he wants, but that shifted a little bit for me when watching him in current things, even past things. Now I get a little bit different, but these views that we have out there, if they're important to you to get out there, like I talk a lot about, and I'm anti-drug, obviously, right? I grew up in the South Bronx. I grew up surrounded by drugs. I had so many friends that went to jail for either selling drugs or committing crimes while on drugs and trying to get money for drugs. I mean, it was a heavy, heavy thing being part of that world and growing up in that world. Luckily for me, I stayed away from drugs, although some people think I'm always on something. But no, I've never taken any drugs. I've never smoked cigarettes. I used to drink a lot of alcohol, wine, not a lot, like I had a problem with it, but I don't have a problem with it. I can have glasses of wine. I haven't had wine or any alcohol in 5 years at least now. Um, Not because I'm against it or anything, but I just don't do it. But I know for a fact that alcohol and drugs can really ruin a person's life. I've seen it. So I talk a lot about the drug-free world, and I talk a lot about, uh, um, the truth about drugs. Which, by the way, in case anybody is interested, tomorrow, ugh, tomorrow I'm doing an episode on the truth about drugs, and this is a little booklet. In here are a lot of booklets for that, which I'm going to cover tomorrow. All the booklets about the different types of drugs, and you can get these for free on the site that I'm going to show you tomorrow. And it also comes in Spanish, and it's in a bunch of other languages as well. But anyway, that's my passion. So I talk a lot about that. So I'm not into the drug culture. People that talk about, yeah, man, I was so wasted, man. I was wasted. Ha 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 ha. That's not really that interesting to me. Someone who can't control themselves and gets so messed up that, you know what I mean? So that's my views. That may turn people off. For the most part, I think a lot of people wouldn't want their kids to do drugs, right? I have two kids. It's very important for me to educate them on these things. So I talk a lot about the way to happiness. I have the common sense guide to better living, which I have in here. I have around here somewhere. You guys know I've done a lot of shows on that. There's 21 precepts on there, which I talk about. I talk about a lot about the mind, and I talk a lot about Dianetics, and I talk a lot about my religion, and I talk a lot about my views about betterment of man, what has helped me, what has changed my life. That's what I talk about. If that changes a person's opinion of me, that's okay in my book, just as it is probably okay for Robert De Niro being in his 80s to give his views of what he thinks life is and what he thinks what he's against and how he thinks it can be better. That's his opinion. He has the right to that. That's why we live in America. We live in the greatest country in the world where we can have views like that. We can say things like that without any uh, repercussions from governments or anything, right? It's not the case in some, like, overseas right now in Europe. Things are not looking good over there. Canada, not looking good over there. Certain places where things are not like that. But here in America, the freest country, the greatest country in the world, we still have that right to have those opinions. And Robert De Niro, I may not agree with him. I may not agree with. I agree with on some of the things, but I definitely will agree with him having the right to say it, and he does definitely have the right to say it. So these are choices that you make within the entertainment industry. Now, some people are obsessed with the art, like me. I love to just talk about the art. That's why most of the shows here that I do, and they're on different platforms, I only talk about one element of the art. Whatever that is, I'll talk about AI in film, AI in music, whatever it is. It's always about that. 99.9999%. You get that 1% of the time when I discuss something that's a little bit, maybe has a little bit of a controversy attached to it, but very, very rarely do I do that, right? I make comments, posts, I make funny posts. it creates a little bit of a buzz. People seem to really, get in on that. I don't get back in there. I just have my opinion. Then I go in and I read some of the comments. Some of them are ridiculous. I laugh at them and then they go, and then I just leave and walk away. You can walk away, by the way, without saying anything. It's an amazing skill to have. I'm so grateful that I have that. All right, friends, it is 20 minutes here. I try to keep these under 20 minutes. I've gone over already. Every morning I'm here, from at 7 a.m. Central. Um, and if you're interested, please just join me. Again, tomorrow I'll be doing the show on the drug-free world. La verdad sobre las drugs. I can't say that word. Drogas. Yeah, drogas. And then the truth about drugs in English. I'll do tomorrow's episode in English, obviously. All right, friends. Take care of yourselves. God bless you all. Take care of each other on this little blue marble floating through space. We're all we got. So let's try to be good to one another. I'll see you all tomorrow morning. And as always, peace.